How can we have peace in the Middle East when there's none at home? How can we have understanding in the land when there's none in the woman? And there's none in the man. How can we heal the wounds of the world if we cannot heal our own? And where does this peace on earth begin if not in the home? Where do we go now? Do we let the devil in, or do we get up and fight? Surely we know how to conquer all our fears, bring an end to the violence, bring an end to the tears. How can we heal the wounds of the world if we cannot heal our own? And where does this peace on earth begin if not in the home? Well, there's too much talk about it, and too many walk without it. Tell me, where is love?
Well, hello, my name is Randy Henderson. I am moderating tonight for the book club chapters 5 and 6 of We Are the Ones We Have Been Waiting For of Alice Walker's novel or book. I am moderating, and I am watching from Atlanta.
I'm Michelle Odom. I'm here in the Bronx tonight, Bronx, New York.
Welcome, Annalise and Paul. My name is Nina Walker, and I am in Hartford, Connecticut, actually Cromwell, Connecticut. Welcome.
Welcome.
Hello, everyone. This is Labib. I'm live here from Long Island, New York.
And my name is Georgette Moses, and I'm participating from Columbia, South Carolina, and I'm happy to see all the new faces here tonight.
Yes, I'm Annalise. I'm in Atlanta.
My name is Paul Chapman, and I am viewing from Atlanta as well.
We are reading We Are the Ones We Have Been Waiting For, Chapters 5, Crimes Against Dog, and Chapter 6, This Was Not an Area of Large Plantations. Okay, so the summary of Chapter 5 and 6. Alice Walker's Chapter 5 was a short but sweet chapter. In it, she reflects on her dog, Marley, and reflects on the things she has taught her. For example, we are not ourselves when we are mean, self-forgiveness, love, affection, and companionship, as well as the importance of these things. Chapter 6 is a much longer chapter and digs deep into human nature. In this chapter, she speaks a lot on healing, reflection of history, and overcoming the past in a healthy manner through meditation, education, and practice. Both chapters include some of Alice Walker's deepest reflections and emotions. These chapters were perhaps her most personal. For question 2, chapter, this was not an area of large plantations, suffering too insignificant for the majority to see. Story so chilling, the horse was drinking his blood. His own father was one of the assassins. His crime was that his horse was too fine. Unfortunately, is one in a storehouse of such stories those of us present might hear or expect to hear on any given day of our lives. What do we do with the shock? What do we do with the anger, the rage? What do we do with the pain? Question 2, Chapter 6. The last part of Walker's question can be related to the death of Michael Brown and a looting that the media refuses to stop discussing. Many would argue that the looters had no right, and yet I find myself ready and willing to tear things apart if I were to find out that someone I loved had passed, been killed, or murdered. So what do we do with the anger, rage, and shock? Is it healthy to act on it and then reel yourself in? I would like to let Benita answer this one first.
I believe, Randy, I think it's very healthy to act on our anger. However, when I look at that particular incident, I think it depends on what stage of life you're at. I'm at the stage now where I use my mind more. Even if I'm angry, I use my mind more. When I was a younger person and I was, in the 20s and maybe in the 30s, I might have acted out first and then reeled myself in. But now, being a more mature person, and my mind, as you mature, you learn how to use your mind first. It's almost like the game of football. I love sports. I'm a football girl. With a season, you can't call me. That's where I am. At a certain point, you will find that young football player, he's quick. But you'll find a mature football player might be a little slower, but he can anticipate everything that's going around him, and he will still carry that game on home. So I believe the mind should work before the anger. Not saying that you shouldn't show your anger or feel anger, I should say, but at this point in my life, and I find with people that are maturing, we tend to use our mind more. As an example that Alice Walker gave in the book, she said, a good example, if someone shoots you in the chest with an arrow, are you going to stand there and chastise that person or ask them why they shot you in the chest with an arrow? Meanwhile, the arrow is still stuck in your chest and you're bleeding profusely? No! You're going to pull that arrow out of your chest. So that's the way I feel about anger. I don't hoard it. I just deal with it in a different way. And that's usually mental. What am I going to do about this? What would be plan A, B, and C? How will I, influence other people to make a change? Because when I looked at that, a lot of the clips on television, quite frankly, I was appalled. Mm-hmm. I just found a whole lot of energy burnt for nothing. Folks were coming all over because they're called opportunists, aka parasites. They had nothing to do about nothing. Even the folks that were looting and doing crazy outlandish things, I thought it was quite crazy. It still didn't address the situation. So I believe in feeling anger, but I think you should use your mind first. Mm-hmm. Sometimes reeling yourself in after is much too late. Much too late. And you can't undo the harm.
Okay, well, just to clarify, the news came out probably like 2 weeks ago and said that the people who were looting, majority of them were people from neighboring counties.
Yes.
That the people of Ferguson had actually been trying to protect the shops.
I said opportunists. I said come from other places. They were opportunists,
Mm-hmm.
AKA parasite. Louisiana during the floods. What did I see in the media? Now we got 190 feet of water, and folks are carrying 52-inch TVs on their back. Where you going? I just can't, and maybe it's something wrong. Maybe I just am in another place at another time or something. But where you going? And then, if you're going to get angry, what I never understood, even during the LA riots, you're projecting your anger at a certain group of people. If you're going to do that, why are you tearing down your own neighborhood? And then when you get done, you stand back and say, what do we do now? I mean, really? That's what happens when you don't use your mind first.
Well, I mean, I agree. I understand. I don't know where you're going with the TV. I don't know why tear down your own neighborhoods, but, you know, but Alice Walker asked a poignant question, where do you go with that anger? And we've gone through the judicial system, we've gone through the legislative systems, we've gone through the executive system. We've done a variety of things to try to seek uh, justice in this country as Black people. Um, but at some level, it really is not working. And so then what do you do? Because there is a legitimate rage that comes when injustice occurs and injustice is not addressed. And there's no justice when an 18-year-old boy is shot down ruthlessly in the street by a police officer, allegedly for some nonsense, and then left in the middle of the street like a piece of trash. What are people supposed to do with that? If you can't get justice from the justice system, it takes you to an irrational place where you do irrational things. And so, no, it doesn't make sense that we turn on ourselves, but we have not found an effective way to get equality, civil rights, justice, freedom, all of that in this country.
You're never going to get it. It's never going to happen, ever.
So what do you do? What do you do? What do you do with that anger? I mean, if it's never going to happen.
I have no idea what we're going to do with it. I don't. We have to find a way. I can't even answer that question. I just know, and I feel in my heart.
And nobody can answer that question.
It has to be.
And that's why they tear down their neighborhoods.
It has to be an outlet, a way to.
Well, really, I think for me, this chapter 6 was really Alice Walker's way of taking us on a journey and giving some guidance as to what to do with that rage. And she says in there at one point that some of us, like herself, have been chosen to walk a particular path where we're not suffering all the oppression that the masses are suffering for. She didn't phrase it like that, but essentially that's what she was saying, that she has been on a special path where she has been afforded opportunities that most of us have not had, and that she has used that opportunity to try to find ways to help us cope with the world we're living in. And that's when she gets into the whole discourse on Buddhism and meditation and and all of that. So which I guess interpret as finding your individual way to process that natural rage.
Well, I mean, I see. Hopefully, you can see me because I've been trying to figure out my Google Hangout here. But I see. I mean, go back to the question. I think anger is a very natural emotion, especially when it's in response to a senseless murder by a cop. I mean, I think we expect there to be a degree of anger. Um, how the media frames the reaction of the protesters, I don't trust that much. Um, because, for example, I mean, Martin Luther King, when he was marching and fighting, he would be arrested for stuff like loitering. And so we have to keep in perspective that the police, as well as our media, have an interest in, and we work together, have an interest in maintaining a certain image of the people vis-a-vis what they're doing in terms of law enforcement. So
Mhm.
of course, I don't condone violence. I think, again, thinking on Alice Walker and who she is vehemently against violence, even as a Buddhist and what have you. But I think that, again, we don't even have the full story on what actually took place there. We are unless you're there firsthand, you kind of at the mercy of what you see on TV. So I really think that it's hard to gauge what was really going on in Ferguson, in the name of, whether or not, what was really moving, because I really don't trust, I guess you could say that, the reports made by the media in that sense to tell the truth about the type of protesting that was going on there. For example, on Twitter, I was able to get real-time tweets, from people I follow on Twitter, and some of their reports were diametrically opposed to what I was seeing on CNN. And so I think one thing that's important when one looks at the news, especially when it comes to events like those in Ferguson or even across the globe in Gaza, we must really realize the way in which the media, who reports things, is going to do so in a particular frame and from a particular perspective. And that perspective is often to blame the victim, as we are seeing was done with Janae today and other days prior here. Blaming the victim for
Mhm.
what's really, for
For being victimized.
and not really giving a nuanced, complex account of what's really taking place. Because I was seeing tweets that were saying that, you had, again, outsiders, people were coming from all over, and they were legitimately, and in some cases, infiltrating the protesting and organizing that had been done there on the ground to intentionally start something with the police, between the police and the people, throwing of water bottles and things like that. And in some cases, they were white and they were doing that. So, yeah, I guess I'm saying that I think Ferguson is interesting in that regard because we don't. I wouldn't say that I would believe everything that's being reported on the news about what's being done there, but I also know the way in which the coloring of people who are protesting and protesting in a legitimate way can be reframed to a negative sense, can be reconstituted and resituated as a bad. I mean, we go back to just mainly 45, 50 years now, and people who were legitimately protesting were considered looters and loiters. So I think we have to keep that in mind when we hear that about even places today.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Mhm. All the time.
yeah.
I think this is actually a great time to ask Mikey, oh, y'all know him as Paul, how he feels
That's
about this
what.
question, considering that he is also young, not as young, but young, like Mike Brown, and because he just read the question and would like to say something because I asked him to.
Okay.
Well, I feel as human beings, we are all entitled to our feelings, whether they be anger, sadness, happiness, joy, whatever the case may be. As a When it comes to how we should act on it, I feel like that is reserved, for the person. Um, when situations like with this Mike Brown incident, mothers hold their children closer, fathers try to spend more time with their sons. Men my age, young black men, start to question their worth. They start to question, will I be next? What do I do to stop a cop from shooting me with my hands in the air? Is there any point in doing anything anymore if we see a man get gunned down in the middle of the street with his hands up? To respond to what was said earlier, I feel like we as human beings, when we see things happen, we know we're not stupid. We see something happen and we know what happened. We can guess, we can listen to news stations, we can go on social networks, social media, and see what other people think about it. But we know what happened. Case in point with the Ray Rice situation. It was released a couple of months ago, the video showing him drag his wife out of the elevator, or fiance. But a lot of people were saying, we don't really know what happened. We can't really judge this man. And I feel like it was false. I knew from watching that video that he hit her or something of that nature, and he did something wrong. Something bad happened in the elevator. But she released a statement at the time saying that she apologized. She wants everyone to forgive him for what they saw.
Oh, Lord, have mercy.
Yes, that happened. And 2 days ago, we find out and we see the full clip that he punched her in her face twice. And she fell out in the elevator, and then we see her getting dragged out. I didn't need to be in Ferguson to see the cop shoot him in his face to know that something went wrong. As the story is told, he was fired upon when he didn't have a weapon for walking in the street. They tried to bring up some information about him robbing a store a few months prior, when it turned out that that video had nothing to do with him. They weren't even sure that was him. And I feel like with the media, things get confusing. Things get, you're meant to be distracted by it. And in situations like this, you start to forget what the real issue is at hand. The real issue for me isn't whether or not this man did anything to deserve this. The issue is, as someone stated earlier, we can't trust the justice system to uphold justice. When you start to think that way, you do start to get angry. And as a black man, I do find myself angry. But then I recognize that as a black man, I'm not allowed to act on that anger in certain ways. Or else other black men will be portrayed or seen as angry based on my actions. So, as sorry, what was your name again?
Michelle?
Vanita. Vanita. As she said earlier, it is better to think before you act. And I find myself trying to be one of those people that thinks the situation through before they act. I am a mother's only son, and I don't want to do something that's going to shed any negative light on my family, no matter how angry I am. I want to break something. I want to hurt something. I want to loot. I want to steal. I want to riot. I want to scream. I want to fight. But none of those help the cause. None of those options help us find any justice for this man or for what other future victims may come. And it can be frustrating. So what I do to get away from my anger, how I deal with it is, like many others, I find a distraction or some act or something that's going to calm me down. And in moments like that where I need my peace, I look to my fiance.
All right.
I look to my family. I look to anything that's going to bring me any sort of assimilation of peace so that I can reel myself in. Because this Mike Brown situation isn't the first to happen. It won't be the last.
Can I say one thing? I am a mother of 2 sons. I recognize these things happen. I grew up in the city of Philadelphia. This is no new revelation. This has been going on forever. However, in light of that, I tell my sons, you are a black man. You do recognize that you have to work 10 times as hard to get half the way. There's no problem to shoot you down the street like an animal. With knowing that information, the first thing you have to do is use your mind. How am I going to save myself? That's the first thing you have to use, is your mind. We recognize it's out there. We recognize our justice system does not work for us, but we know these things. I want my sons to live, so I tell them to use their minds first. It's hard being a mother of two black male children.
It is, Benita, and and I mean, yes, yes, we can and should use our minds, but what did Trayvon Martin do wrong? At some level, there's more than just your personal responsibility, your personal actions that are involved here. We are living in an unjust world. And what did Mike Brown do wrong? It's not, there's more going on than just how you handle yourself. That has to be addressed. That has to be addressed systemically.
This is true. However, the folks that we're dealing with, first of all, have to see us as humans. And when you don't see folks as humans, then you don't treat them as so. Now, that's been going on forever and a day. I got a headache.
Randy, where are we?
How can we heal the wounds of the world if we cannot heal our own? And where does this peace on earth begin if not in the home? Yeah.